everybody, it's Chugga Conroy. Welcome back to more Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time. Rather well timed if I do say so myself. Last adventure, we took on the leader of the Shroobs and emerged victorious, saving the Mushroom Kingdom of the past and present. At the cost of an entire other civilization being able to live on, but we won't get caught up in the details. After all, history is written by the winners, and that's what we are, and that's what this entire adventure has been about, rewriting history. This time, we are back once again to see all the things that we have not seen yet about Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. And there's actually a lot. I was very surprised about just how much there was to go over still. So, for those of you that were all like, oh, there's not really much more to this game, what are you talking about? Why are you having to do so much? Well, you'll see momentarily. First off, this title screen is more detailed than it might seem at first glance. As you can see here, the quartet is together on the clock hands, and when the Alpha Dream logo came up right at the very beginning, you heard all four of them say Nintendo together. That was not always the case. Nintendo! Back at the beginning of the adventure, it was just the bros doing both of these things. At the very specific point where you can save aboard the Koopa Cruiser when the bros are seemingly dead and you're on your way to go save them as the babies, if you go back to the title screen, Nintendo! To my knowledge, that is the only time this ever happens. Yeah, in fact, I kind of feel like it was a bit of an oversight because the clock hands aren't properly attached to the clock face because it relies on the sprites of the other clock hands being there that the bros ride. But if you try saving with just the babies and leave the bros in another room after this point when the quartet's gotten together for the first time, you don't see this. It shows the quartet together on the title screen anyway after this point, even if they've split up when you saved. This title screen was already super cute, had great music, and was just nice to sit back and watch for a few minutes because it was so good, but this makes it even better. Moving past the title screen, how about we answer a question that I'm sure all of us had at one point or another. What happens if you grind up on the Shrooblets outside Holly Jolly Village, or excuse me, near Holly Jolly Village is the official name, in order to beat the Shroobs that you're forced to lose to at the beginning of the game? The answer? You can't. The Shrooblets despawn until you complete the area, meaning that you can only fight each of those battles one time before that point, and the highest level that you can possibly reach from beating them all is nowhere near enough to beat those Shroobs. If you were to cheat and win anyway, it actually does not crash the game like a certain other force loss that I'm sure we're all too familiar with. Instead, the color palette on the UFO counting down the turns screws up because it doesn't know how to react to the end battle transition, and then it just treats it as though you lost anyway. And for probably the most pressing thing that I promised are the moves that we didn't get to see just because of a boss fight ending prematurely or because of having bad luck, one or the other. There are only two regular enemies with attacks that we never got a chance to see. The first is the spiny Shroopa all the way back in the Vim Factory. Since what is normally their only attack requires the hammer to deal with, they have a rolling attack that they will only do when fighting the bros by themselves. A very remote attack I don't think a lot of people have seen, and I actually didn't know about until recently. Second is the Thwack Totem from Thwomp Volcano. It has a jump attack that creates shockwaves aimed at whichever bro to the corresponding color of Thwack, one or both of them. Pretty basic, but it is pretty cool looking. As for the bosses, there aren't that many that we didn't get a chance to see. First one in chronological order is Sunnyside. He has a different lever that he can pull than the one that makes you have to jump over holes that form in the ground, and he's able to turn out the lights. This will cause boosts to come out and you have to repel them with your hammer. Pretty basic. Sunnyside has another attack that we never saw, which is inhaling you and having to hammer him when you get close to him. I feel sorry for whoever had to animate these attacks in particular because he spends so much of the battle on his back that you never get to see them. The second one is the one that I was easily the most disappointed about. This one I like a lot. The Shrooboid Brat's main gimmick is that the audience will cheer for what they want him to do. We saw this in that they can do the wave to pass items through sections of the crowd to determine who's going to get hit by what attack. But they can also just simply hold up cards to vote for who they want to get hit by the next attack that he's going to dish out. It's a pretty good idea for a boss, and he's probably the coolest boss that we didn't really get much of a chance to see, so there you go, that's what makes him special. Third is this goofy-looking, long-tongued piranha plant that Petey Piranha can summon. You repel it with the hammer, and wow, this requires a lot of hits before it totally goes away. I could see some beginners maybe having some trouble with this one. The fourth and final regular boss move that I wanted to show is basically the same thing, but with a much more fun-looking coat of paint. You play catch with the Shroob Bomb against the Shroobs that are holding him, and you have to repel it an absurd amount of times to completely avoid taking damage. I'm kinda glad I didn't have to deal with this attack on a regular basis, but it is pretty fun. That should be it for all the regular enemies and regular bosses. Moving right along to something that I can't physically show you what it's like at all is an accessory, specifically the DS Rumble Pack. I'm willing to bet a lot of you didn't even know that this thing existed, and I can't blame you. I think I only seriously saw it on a store shelf one time in 2005 and then never again. A few dozen games took advantage of this, where it would slot into the Game Boy Advance slot of an early model DS or DS Lite, so that it would give rumble to certain games. Mario & Luigi Partners in Time, as well as Metroid Prime Pinball, were Nintendo's first two big first-party offerings that were meant to take advantage of this peripheral and sell you on it. I suppose it's something that Partners in Time is special in being the only entry in the series to date to have rumble, but I've never personally used one of these, and I could not tell you if it's good or not or serves any functional purpose. It would be kinda nice to have some enemy tells told through rumble, but I don't know if that's the case. These things aren't very expensive or hard to come by, so if you want to try something new in Partners in Time that you've never done before, odds are this is new ground for you. And since we are talking about physical items that have something to do with this game, I want to draw attention to the paper inserts that came in the box, because I have sworn up and down for almost half of my life that there was one time that I was reading through the manual to Partners in Time, and I saw in fine print at the bottom of a page, copyright 2005 Mario & Luigi Partners in Crime. But whenever I tried looking this up on the internet, I could never find it, and when looking through my own copy, I could never find it. After a while, I started to think maybe I just imagined it and it couldn't have possibly happened, but it did actually happen. I was just looking in the wrong place. It's on the sheet for the product registration. You can see it right there. Mario & Luigi, Partners in Crime. I love it. Over the years, it was difficult for me to find anything about this because not only was it not well documented, but the search results were being clogged up not only by fan projects of the same name, but by the news headline for a robbery that took place in New York City in 2009, where the suspects were dressed up as Mario and Luigi for Halloween. I'm sorry, okay, the crime itself is not funny, but the news headline is hilarious. I'm sorry, just, that is the perfect news headline for this. And, well, okay, all this to say that a typo really does exist, kind of, in the game. I want to thank the many people that sent me pictures of this, including SebTH1 on Twitter, whose picture I chose to use for this video. That does it for all the minor things that are in the game that we didn't get a chance to see, so now how about we move on to all the minor things that aren't in the game that we didn't get a chance to see, and based on the runtime of this video, it'd be kind of impressive if I talked about every single game that currently exists aside from this one so that I could technically be fulfilling what I just said, but I think you understand what I mean. We're going to be getting into the beta testy and unusedy stuff. First of all is the game's title. The English title of Mario & Luigi Partners in Time was, up until very soon before its release, just Mario & Luigi 2. This is much more similar to the Japanese title of the game, which reminds me of how this is yet another Nintendo series where the American logos look super phoned in compared to the awesome Japanese logos. I mean, seriously, just look at this thing. It's a beautiful work of art. It just makes me want to read it in some announcer voice, like, Mario & Luigi RPG 2x2! I think it sounds cool. Since we were just talking about the title screen and then moved on to talking about the enemies, how about we do that once again by talking about this guy? He has an adorable name, Scoot Bloop. He's a blooper that walks on land. He is an unused enemy that was seen in some pre-release screenshots being fought in the Vim Factory, but if you look up his data in the final game, he has stats comparable to the enemies in Yube's belly, so it's a little hard to say where he would have been used. Personally, I would have stuck him in the sewers under Peach's castle, but hey, that's just me. Very cute enemy with a very cute name. He doesn't really do a whole lot. He has an attack where he rams at you, and then another attack that just crashes the game, so I wouldn't recommend fighting against him if you could avoid it, but hey. His Japanese name is just simply Land Blooper, so when they make an enemy name that much cuter than what it was in Japan, I think we can forgive them a little bit for the logo. Moving on to more interesting stuff is unused areas. Like any game, there's some unused test maps that are just some green grassy fields with some objects for you to interact with for debugging purposes. Those aren't really what we're here to talk about. There is an entire unused major region that was set to appear in Partners in Time. It's Bean Bean Castletown from Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. The town itself is not finished, only a section of it was drawn up and put into the game, but there it is. I'm guessing maybe they just decided to go with Toad Town instead of this. Maybe they thought it'd be a little bit too redundant because this kind of did just appear in the last game. It's also possible that maybe they just drew this up to define the visual style of the game before they had the new areas designed. It's not entirely unusual for areas from previous games to get remade in the visual style just for testing purposes to make sure that the style works. But it is one of the more interesting things here. There's also these things. They seem to be top screen maps for areas we didn't get, or maybe early concepts for the Gritzy Caves, or maybe just some leftover images the developers had lying around from a canceled project? Even stranger, they seem to be two very different looking maps, but of the same location because the layouts match up almost perfectly. So, no idea what these would be for, unless in the beta version of the game the maps were planned to be even more unhelpful than they are in the final. I don't know. There's some other minor unused sprites, like this one of a Womp NPC, which, if I had to guess, was cut because its walk cycle is really awkward. You can see that it's constantly changing in size to keep it within the space allotted for the characters to occupy, so it probably didn't look good and just was not a good idea, so it got left out. And then also the fact that Yoshi eggs, which you only ever see in cutscenes, are programmed to be kicked around whenever you touch them, even though you can't do that in the final game. But nothing really too crazy there. I'd like to thank the community on the Cutting Room Floor wiki for compiling these last 2 points of information, but oddly, a lot of other things that I'm talking about here are not on their website, so again, nobody remembers this game or archives anything about it for some reason. Okay, I guess this info will be added soon enough. And in fact, this next point is something that I think very few people are aware of, and I wanted to bring this to light. The earliest known build of Partners in Time was showcased at E3 2005, with a short trailer featuring a song not heard in the final game, you're listening to it right now, as well as a demo which footage of is extremely scarce. I know it sounds unheard of for today's standards, but this predates YouTube becoming popular, and back then, people just didn't take video footage of everything that happened at E3. On top of that, only 2 demo kiosks in the entire event featured Partners in Time. The only 2 places on the whole internet that I could find with any demo footage was a YouTube channel called Burby100 and a French website called Game Cult. I wasn't able to ask them for permission to use this footage because Burby didn't have any posted contact info, and I don't know French. Hopefully they don't get mad at me, and if they do, then... Puis-je utiliser votre vidéo? Butchering of the language of love aside, it does actually have quite a few differences despite being only a few months before the release. Starting with the minor, some of the names are different, like the Coopelian having the awesome name of Neander Koopa, and the battle transition is amazing by comparison to the final game. Seriously, why did they change that? The objectives in the demo are different, involving finding gold stars, but I'm guessing this is just for the demo, as a lot of press events have basic objectives that aren't even intended to be in the final game. This demo that has you going around Toadwood Forest collecting gold stars might look familiar to you even if you didn't attend E3. That is because the retail store demo for Partners in Time was this demo. However, unlike the retail demo, the E3 showing had Yoshi's Island as a playable area, which at that point in development was called Yostar Isle. The Japanese name is Yoster Isle, as seen in Super Mario RPG, so it's probably just simply a leftover from an early translation. Should you have chosen to explore Yostar Isle in the E3 demo, you would have had access to the scrapped Spike Shell Bros attack. Of course, as luck would have it, the presenter of this video never chooses to use it. I know, what rotten luck. It's almost like the presenter wanted to spite me 12 years in the future for not being able to ask him for permission to use his footage. Oh well, I guess he'll just have to settle for this footage from the trailer. How do you like that? An unused Bros attack being used on an unused enemy. It's almost like they wanted to fascinate us 10 years from when this was made. Oddly, the Bros attacks in these menus have distinctions of being 2-man attack and 4-man attack, with the Spiky Shell being classified different from those as a hammer attack. showing that at one point the babies were going to have their own unique bros attacks that only they were able to perform as a duo. I kind of already supported the removal of basically just the Koopa shell but using the hammer, but I especially support it now because it sounds like it would have been really freaking annoying having different bros attacks available to you depending on which duos you were playing as in addition to everything else. The trampoline works a little differently, but I can't make heads or tails of exactly how this worked. You see the 3 buttons to not press and then hit the remaining button for one big attack, only for the trampoline to not go away and stay on the field. I really can't figure out how this would have worked, but you can see that it does work differently, I guess. The last bros attack that seemed to go through some changes was that the mixed flower looked very different in these early images, and I actually prefer this version in appearance, but who knows, maybe it looked worse in motion. We don't have video footage of this attack being used, only this screenshot. In case you're wondering, the replacement for Yostar Isle in the retail demo is the second half of the Vim Factory, or Energy Factory, I guess. It's pretty unexciting, it doesn't have any notable changes, it's just get to the end and beat Swiggler to win. The only mildly interesting part of this selection of the demo is a training ground exclusive to the demo before you actually start the Vim Factory, so the most interesting part of it is not part of it at all. The topics I've saved for last all have to do with the game's final boss and ending, so if you're perhaps tuning in just for an introspective, retrospective documentary type thing on the development of Partners in Time, you can turn away now if you want to avoid spoilers. The Shroob royal family might put up the longest final boss fight in Mario history, and to match, they have a boatload of different attacks, and you're unlikely to see them all in one run. Out of the ones we didn't get to see, first, when Princess Shroob is sitting on her throne, she has these 2 laser beam shooters that can aim either at the air above you or on the ground so that you have to jump over it. It's a pretty basic attack and it goes on for a while, but I wouldn't say that it's hard to avoid or anything. Elder Princess Shroob fights by commanding her army of UFOs, and her moveset changes based on how many UFOs are available to her at the current time. So basically, you have to fail action commands for her to have access to her full moveset. For the attacks that we didn't get to see on the first run-through, at 3 UFOs or more, she gains the ability to use a Meteor Attack on you. Again, I really wish we had an attack like this, but maybe someday in the far future. She comes at you very slowly, and when she laughs at you is when you can begin hitting her with your hammer. You need to hit her several times to get her to drop it. Second, the only attack that she's capable of doing on her own, even if she has 0 UFOs above her, is a football tackle of sorts. It's capable of inflicting trip, has 2 hits, and can also have a fake out to it. Outside of North America, you're a lot more likely to see this, as she will counter every time you directly do damage to her with this attack. And last, as long as she has at least 1 UFO, she is able to order a drink and heal herself. In non-North American versions, this only heals 80 HP instead of 120, so once again, we have the hard mode. But that isn't even her final form. In the last phase, she's able to create this giant purple energy ball made up of smaller green and red energy balls. It hits the bro who had more of their color put into it, and you have to hit it twice in order to launch it back at her. Oh boy, this last one. Elder Princess Shroob has an attack so rare that I have never personally seen it during normal gameplay. In fact, for a while, I even believed it was a hoax. But turns out, no, it does exist. I sat here grinding for an hour and 12 minutes trying to get her to do this attack, and nothing. So I had to settle for using footage that someone else had recorded, so hopefully they're okay with that as well. Giving credit to the person that recorded this, their username is Spaghetti Fish Sandwiches. I certainly hope that's not also your real name, or you probably had a very miserable childhood, but they said it took them over an hour to see this attack, so I know I'm not alone. Elder Princess Shroob, in her monster form, is able to summon a time hole as long as her feet tentacles are not destroyed. She damages some UFOs, causing them to be either electrified or on fire, sucks them in, and 1 turn later, only if her feet tentacles still have not been destroyed, she will lob them out at you, and you have to remember what the tells were for which bro in what order was being attacked from the previous turn. Even not trying to destroy her tentacles and knowing what it took to see it, it's still ridiculously rare, and you're unlikely to ever see this attack. But those are just the little asides. We're gonna pick another fight with Princess Shroob, and this time with some different equipment. I've mentioned before that the Risk Badge is an extremely overpowered badge similar to the Mush Badge in Days of Mario and Luigi Past. This works opposite to the Mush Badge, where you will do more damage based on the fewer healing items you have. Should you get rid of all of your healing items, yes, you are vulnerable, but you might be able to survive just on having things like the Treasure Badge that give you drops after every battle, specifically in the last area where you get Ultra Drops. I've given this to Mario to maximize damage output, and I've given Luigi the Dynamic Badge A. This is at least what I believe to be the ultimate setup that you can have. So how about we see just how well Princess Shroob fares against us with this setup? And boy, if you thought I was overpowered before, let me just remind you, this badge has been available since we cleared the Gritzy Caves, and it's not even hard to obtain. Starting off, because I don't feel like spending 4 times the cost of a Bros attack in order to bring down her shield, Mario, you get to be on shield duty this time. Lucky you. Woohoo! Again, why can't I be that good when it actually does damage? Alright, Luigi, your turn is going to be spent. Let's go ahead and do the red peppers. I don't think that she can full health to death us in one move. If she does, I'll be very ashamed. Star attack. Okay, let's just hop over that. It's gonna get harder to do now. Not quite. A little earlier. Nope, little earlier than that. Little earlier than that. Yes, do it. Okay. I feel pretty good about that. And here we go. Trampolines! You and I have had the start of a lovely relationship, so how about we continue said relationship with a second outing? Look at that! That wasn't even, like, my best attempt at that ever, and I did almost 2,000 damage. Let's compare the damage per hit to the Dynamic Badge A. I can barely even speak after that. Oh. She should only have 300 HP left at this point. If she did a counterable attack, we could probably finish her off right here and now. Thankfully, this isn't quite as broken because you are having to play the risky game of not having any healing items in your inventory to do this, but it's still pretty darn powerful. In fact, she probably, yep. She only actually got to use one attack that did any damage to us, and that was that. You do have to be pretty experienced to be able to pull this off to its fullest effect, but you get the point. It's very powerful. And this is also why I try to limit my equipment sets a little bit, because this is how powerful you can truly become with the right badges. Let's go. In the case of this battle, they heal you between the phases. You might not exactly want to have 0 healing items. I'm just showing you how powerful this badge can possibly be under its best circumstances. And, you know, speaking of best circumstances, she can have her defense lowered by the Ice Flower. I see no reason not to weaken her before we do this. Without even having the buff, I did almost 500 damage with the Ice Flowers just to get her defense down. That is pretty darn amazing. How about we go ahead and go for the red peppers? And, okay, 2 UFOs. You're helping me out. Only shooting stars break the mold. And I only get 1, okay. Not like I'm gonna use this red shell, but hey, I guess it looks nice. All right, so Chain Chomp. Going to Mario, coming back out, going to Luigi. Gotcha. Let's freaking do this. You know what, actually? Let's give the copy flowers a chance. Trampolines might be fun, but that doesn't mean they should be allowed to have all the fun now. Swore I did that right, but 2,352 damage. Had that gone on just a tiny bit longer, I probably would have instantly won. Speaking of instantly winning, yeah. Yourself. Here we go. So, jump over that, jump over that. I do have to be a little bit careful right here, because she does get to attack at the beginning of the fight. She's probably going to hit us a few times. Okay, there. Nope. Okay, here comes the tentacles you gotta jump over. Only 2 this time. With 81 HP, will it be enough? I don't know. Let's find out. 2,133. I think after this next hit, that might be it already. Yeah? When I said that I was nowhere near as powerful as I possibly could be and people were telling me that I was making the game way too easy, oh boy, you hadn't seen anything. If you know what you're doing, it's not really that hard. And I attribute that to being why I had a pretty easy time with some things, but yep, that's all there is to that. Seeing this ending again is great, but I feel like it's missing something. Yep, there was a save album here this entire time. People asked how I didn't see it. Well, the answer is I didn't see it. Yeah, I don't remember being able to save before this, and when I was doing the recording, I just so happened to not see that this was here. However, I think I know why I remember not being able to save. If you hit this, Stuffwell just immediately is like, oh, if you want to go back in time, you can. And I was like, what? Why would I ever want to do that if that's all the save block does? So, yeah, I guess I just kind of remembered it wrong. You can indeed save right here. You're not totally screwed. You can save during the ending, so disregard everything I said, but I thought it was pretty funny. To end this once and for all, though, I've talked at length about how the Japanese and American versions differ a lot. The American version has an earlier build date, and the difficulty was very much rebalanced for Japan. The final boss fight is probably the most changed thing of them all. The combined phases have 9,500 HP in the US version, and only 5,500 in Japan. But there's a ton of other changes. Almost every enemy has some stats adjusted, or the items cost different amounts, and if you grew up in the UK, you might actually have some of these changes in effect in the version that you played because you got a hybrid of the American text with the Japanese difficulty. So if you were playing around, it's very possible that some things might not have matched up with me. However, the biggest change, and to me, The most interesting change is the end screen after the credits. This song is not even present in the data of the North American release, meaning that it was not inserted into the game until the Japanese version was having its changes inserted after the North American version had gone gold. I think it's a beautiful song, one of the most underappreciated songs in Mario, just simply because North American players never got a chance to hear it. And it ends the game on a much happier note than just a silent photograph. I think that's it, though. As some side thoughts, Baby Luigi is the best thing in this game, and Baby Mario is not far behind. I appreciate them taking advantage of these tertiary characters and giving them more depth than just being roster fillers in sports games, because I never knew that I would be a fan of Baby Luigi before playing this. Oh, and I very much appreciate how central the Cobalt Star is, and how the mystery of what it actually is a really big part of the plot, and just how important the thing winds up being in the end. It's certainly not a MacGuffin like a certain other thing that I once complained about. I can see that a clear effort was made to make the story stronger this time, and I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and thank you to the speedrun community for partners in time that had a resurgence in the last few months for being such darn good sports about my comments towards speedrunning this game toward the start of this series. I swear to you that between when that video was recorded and it actually being released, there really weren't many runners or activity dealing with this game, but I'm happy to see people giving this another go, and I salute you for giving this game some long overdue love. I hope I could show you what this game means to me, showing you the surprising amount of information that just hasn't been well documented, and maybe this game's not as bad as you remember it if you were like some of my friends. I certainly hope it wasn't. See you guys next time.